morning, guys, and welcome back to the Now Morning Show, your Tuesday edition, where, as always, we have Unique, Not Different. This morning, we are exploring the Human Rights Project, the legislative framework for persons with disability. And to do so, we are joined by three second-year students of the Hugh Wooding Law School. Miss Aliyah Dickerson, who is centered, Samaya Rahman, who is closest to me. Am I getting it right? Okay, good. And Celine Dukaran, who is furthest away, all of whom are going to help us explore some framework and discuss the human rights perspective, if you will, where legislature is concerned around persons with disabilities. So ladies, first off, good morning, and thank you for joining us here on the Now. Now, before we get into the actual framework itself, the Human Rights Clinic of the Hugh Wooding Law School has a particular mandate. It's really a special program of the Legal Aid Clinic. So tell me a little bit about the mandate itself, if you would. Who's going to be my first taker?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Nice.
So the Human Rights Clinic is just geared towards dealing with particular human rights issues. So we have the option to deal with any human rights issue that relates to Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
So we decided to do disability rights because we thought that this was a kind of overlooked area of human rights. So basically the clinic is just geared to give back in any way you want. So our focus was education and awareness, which is why we're here today.
Perfect. Now, education and awareness can take on many, many forms. So, ladies, give me a little insight as to what that could look like. Are we talking workshops? Are we talking just speaking to the general public in this format? What does that look like, Aliyah?
So I could speak for our substantive project. So what we have done in the past few weeks is that we have visited numerous schools. So for instance, we visited Presentation College, which is situated in San Fernando. And there we had an interactive session with Form 6 students. We also went to the Maracas SDA Primary School, where we also had another interactive session with Standard 5 students, where we explored the topics such as bullying, knowing how to be kind. We also explored the importance of human rights and also the importance of us knowing our own human rights, and that human rights is all around us and we're entitled to that.
That's a good place to start. I think a lot of people hear these buzzwords, if you will, but don't have real context. So Samia, if you could give me a little insight into, first of all, legislative framework. Does it already exist? And if not, specifically for persons with disabilities, when we're talking about human rights therein, and what does it look like, what are we building on, and what are the end goals?
Okay, so Aliyah will go into more in detail on that, but there are legislative frameworks in place in Trinidad, but the problem is that they are not enforced. They are not actually applied in practice, and they have been around. There have been promises to the disabled community to actually apply these laws, and they just never come to fruition. And I think the disabled community is very frustrated at this because there have been promises and promises, and they actually have never actually been applied.
Makes sense. Many subgroups can explore or have experienced that sort of promises but never see it happening. So what I'm hearing is, out of this actual project, out of this clinic, we will have some actionable steps perhaps, yes?
Yes, we do.
Perfection. So tell us some of those challenges then, Aliyah. What are some of the things that persons with disabilities face as a result of a lack of legislation?
Well, I would say there is legislation, but as Samia said, it isn't enforced in the way that it should. So, for instance, we have the Equal Opportunities Act, which is an act that promotes equality, right? It prohibits discrimination, for instance, in the workplace. It prohibits discrimination within the education arena, and also it prohibits discrimination from persons being able to equally access goods and services. So currently, as we speak, some of the challenges that persons with disabilities face right now is the right to accessibility and to access different things. So for instance, ramps, right? For instance, in city gates and these specific areas, you know, it doesn't have proper access for them. Even in terms of if they are to go to certain areas, they aren't properly treated as opposed to, I'll say, reasonable, normal citizens. So these are some of the challenges that they are currently facing here.
So Celine, tell me then recommendations that we might have coming out of these clinics. since it sounds like we know exactly where the problems are.
So the primary focus is enforcement of the legislation. So as Sami and Aliyah would have said, that we already have legislation in place, but it's not properly being enforced. So that is the starting point, enforcement of legislation. Then we would look at education and awareness, because a lot of disabled persons, they are discriminated in Trinidad and Tobago, but they don't know their particular rights. And because of that, they find it hard to make reports because, general distrust in the legal system or just fear of retaliation. So whether it's education and awareness to disabled persons or to just the general public, that should also be mandatory.
Now, in terms of the perspective change, what we want to see with John Public and persons with disabilities, I'm sure you have experience, because here you are doing the work, learning the things and expressing it. Has your perspective changed having explored this project and doing the work itself?
Definitely. And, our research has led us to see that there are other countries in the world that have made these steps that are necessary. They have adopted laws that we think Trinidad needs to make that step and do the same, that they have mandated that public infrastructure, public accommodations, they have to take into account disability needs. We have no mandatory provisions yet. I feel like in a country where we are governed by the Constitution, that everyone is supposed to be equal, for years and years, the disabled community, they are not treated as equal.
Mm-hmm. So Samaya is ready to go. Yeah, we agree, and you have seen the change, or have changed your perspective as well?
We have a lot of work to do, because as I said, though we have all these legislations in place, the way that it isn't being enforced, I think it's not properly done. So we have a lot of work to do, for sure.
So you guys are doing the work, and then how can we, the public, play a part in that work? This project in particular, you said it is literally a project, part of your actual academic achievements. How do we help that happen?
So I think one of the points Aliyah made was that employment discrimination is one of the challenges that are faced by disabled persons. So the starting point there would, you would have employers be more educated on how to accommodate those types of persons in the workplace. So it ties back into that awareness point, just by knowing how to accommodate them, knowing how to, deal with an environment like that, then I think that is
good place to start.
Good place to start.
You mentioned, though, that some of your outreach programs involved students, both primary school level, secondary school. Will we see more of those anytime soon?
Well, I believe, catering that the upcoming students who are coming into year 2 next year, God's willing, they would take on this topic, hopefully, and that they will take on a project like this so that we can continue making the public aware of the hardships that persons with disabilities go through, and their voices be heard, because they are really struggling.
Well, we appreciate you guys lending your voice this morning. All three of whom are second-year students at the Hugh Wooding Law School, giving us some insight into the legislative framework project of the Human Rights Project, rather, that they are taking on to make sure that the voices of the persons with disabilities are heard. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Continue the good work. Yes. And guys, we will continue to give you things that you can actually use, just not in the way that you might think. Entertainment is up next here on the Now. Stick around, guys.
Is it safe for me to show you?